Get fellows like George who you could trust implicitly and who had the gumption to handle these rather desperate situations was of such great value to us. There were about 4 or 5 officers like that in our camp. Bruce Hall had picked, Bruce Hunt had picked. He was uncanny the way he could pick these fellows out. There was another chap called Gordon Nichols who was at he had been in the ambulance service here, and he was another marvellous man.
Gordon, I think, was a sergeant.
Yes, he was. Yes. I had an idea, I don't know, I had heard a couple of years ago that he was still alive. I don't know, but he was really an outstanding chap.
I think in the Heroes of F Force there's mention of a dispute between George Gwynn and Gordon Nichols.
Is that right?
And Bruce Hunt sorted it out in very smart time.
Yes, it would be felt very, very smartly. Yes, Gordon Nichols. He came back and he went back into the ambulance and he worked and he became quite senior here. Of course, I'm sure he's retired now.
He must have done some wonderful work.
He did. He was very, very good. There was another little fellow called Wally South. Well, he was a tough little boy, but he was extremely good. It was amazing what these men would do, and they were just so tough fellows, you'd think, and yet they were so gentle and so thoughtful regarding these codes.
Did you ever, did you ever have much to do with Colonel Banno?
Colonel Banno, he was out of his depth, the poor old boy, the old Japanese. He was pretty useless. I don't think anybody had got very much with it. I think that he was one of the more innocent of them, and of course that's a bit of a disaster to be senior and be a disaster and be innocent over there. But he used to come round occasionally, but he was of no great help. No, he was not. There were some shockers too. Toyama. He was one of the worst, and he met a sudden end. A couple I'll tell him.
Yes. Did you, when Bruce, as I understand it, Bruce persuaded, it was probably Banno or someone above him, to establish that medical facility down at Tanbaya in...
Bruce got very worried about the fact, I think it was our location of Shimo Songkurai and Songkurai, and we were not getting any better. We had no idea where it was going, and Bruce felt the only thing to do was to get the really sick away up into Burma. He had gone through to Burma and had a look around. He prevailed upon the Japs to let him go up and see, with the idea of getting them away from this area that we were entrapped in. He picked on this Tanbazayat, I think it was the name of it. I don't know how, so I did not go up there, so I don't know exactly how far, but it was some distance up. And he eventually went up, and they took quite a large number of cases with them. But I think that actually when they arrived there, conditions were not quite so satisfactory, quite so good as they thought. I've never, to the best of my ability, I don't know that there was any, I don't know whether they improved matters for by moving up there or not. Yes.
Well, we're talking about the hospital facility which Bruce established in Burma.
Yes.
Tanbaya.
Tanbaya, and that was about 50 miles from the northernmost part of the line, yes. Was it? Yeah, well, he said...
who went up there with him?
Frank Carl. Bruce took with him Frank Carl, Fred, who was a surgeon, and Fred Stahl, who was an administrator, and several others whom I just can't recall at the moment. I don't know how conditions were when they got up there. Apparently, Frank Carl was able to do more surgery than he certainly would have been able to back in Songkurai or Shimo Songkurai, which of course were in the jungle. but it was quite a journey. But Bruce, as far as I know, walked and he went up there and then came back and then he went back again, so that he made several trips, all the time coming down to see how his responsibilities were down in the Songkurai area. He was a very powerful man, physically and mentally.
I think, I can't remember, it might have been in Heroes of F Force where they mentioned that he put one over Benno on one occasion. He went seeking some medical supplies which Benno declined, but gave him a jar of Marmite. But then on the way out, Bruce calls into the medical corporal with the medical stores and says, "Colonel Benno says I'm to have quinine, emetine, blah blah blah."
Oh, God, yes he would.
Walks out with a pack full of gear.
Yes, he would.
Apparently he swaggered back into the camp with a great smile on his face.
He was an extraordinary man. He was extraordinary. He really got himself into trouble there on a number of occasions, serious trouble.
I believe there was an incident on the march up where he was beaten.
He was beaten. That was before he came. He was behind me on the way on the march up, but in some camp he got into trouble there with a Jap, and I think he attacked him with a golf club, and he fractured. I think he had fractures of both hands. And when he first came up to Songkurai, he was still having trouble with this, but nothing would stop Bruce. He was a ruthless man in many ways.
And he had a British officer with him at the time, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah. Was that the interpreter?
Wild. Oh, well, Cyril Wild and Charles Dillon were in Songkurai. These were two magnificent officers. Because Wild was to be the chief he was the chief interpreter and was to be the chief witness in the trial in Tokyo, but after the war, but subsequently he was killed unfortunately in an aircraft crash. If all the other British officers, medical officers, were of the same standard as these two, it would have been a very different story, perhaps.
You're referring to Dillon.
Dillon and Wild are two magnificent men. Yes, some of the finest men I've ever known.
Yes.
They were so quite outstanding, and I think even their fellow officers recognised that. The senior man of the lot was desperate.
Now, Bruce, when he went up the line, wasn't originally sent up as the senior medical officer. Major Stevens was sent up.
Yes.
Where was he located?
I think Stevens was down south of there, but he was senior. I think Stevens had commanded a field ambulance or something or other in days of peace. I don't know, but he had a lot of experience. But he was, fortunately I didn't come across him in my service to any degree. He was he wouldn't have been a patch on Bruce Hunted anyway at all. And I'm interested to know that. I didn't realise that Hunt was not the senior. It wouldn't make no difference to Bruce in any case.